Somebody who was following this story closely in the run-up to that day was Sello Tatai at the SABC at the time, a reporter on the ground and then working behind the scenes. And of course, the workers had gathered during that strike and we had seen violence in the days preceding. To discuss, we're joined by Sello Tatai, who was there. Sello, thank you for being with us. So we often focus on the day, but tell us what happened preceding, what led in your mind to the Marikana massacre?
Well, thank you, Francis. I think it is important to take into account that the story of Marikana doesn't start on the 16th of August, nor does it start on August in 2012. When we did the events leading to the 16th of August, we started in 2011, and already there were patterns of instability at Marikana at that particular time. You would know that during the massacre, days leading into the massacre, Lonmin had dismissed 11,000 workers following a leadership tussle within the NUM at career shaft of Lonmin operations. Now, a gentleman or a worker who was vying for the position of branch chairperson of the NUM at this particular shaft was followed to his house and stoned to death. The NUM then took a decision to dismiss one chap by the name of Mawetu Stephen, whom they blamed for causing eruptions and conflicts at Career Shaft. What we know then is that following the dismissal of workers, there were protracted negotiations between the NUM and mine management. 9,000 workers were reemployed, but the rest were left and subjected to squalor conditions at Nkani Informal Settlement. In 2012, Career Shaft would become a mobilization ground for workers in their demand for 12,500 after deductions. Now, in August, there were two security guards who were hacked to death, their bodies mutilated, and one of them was set alight. That was Hassan Fundi and Ndatema Belani. And subsequent to this tragic incident, two police officers were hacked to death in a confrontation with police. But there were also workers who were killed the days leading to the 16th of August. One of them is Ndate Twala. And according to the evidence that was led at the commission, he was killed behind the kopje or 100 meters away from the kopje. And he was found with 16 stab wounds and a bullet wound into his body. Now, Ndate Twala's story is synonymous with the pictures that were distributed and shared on various social media platforms, including mainstream media. And his lifeless body was placed, they had placed a cow skull in his chest. And when we probed and to understand why was this done, we were told that it is a symbol of one being a sellout, for a lack of a better word.
Yeah. So there was this incredible volatility in the run-up to that day. And police had declared that day D-Day, but I think none of us were prepared for what came. So, Sello, you had left the scene and you came back. You were working in the newsroom. Were you like me, in disbelief, watching what was unfolding before your eyes?
I mean, Francis, you'll know that there is what is called journalistic instinct. From 2011 already, some of us knew that if the matter or what was the scenes which were playing out at the Platinum Belt at that particular time, including Impala and Marikana, we could pick up that something bad was about to happen if it is not addressed swiftly. And you'll know that between the 14th and 16th of August, those 2 days, those 48 hours, There was no violence at Marikana, only for the 16th of August for police to resolve on a D-Day, and that is when 34 mine workers were killed during a confrontation with police. Now, there are two scenes on what happened on that particular day. The first scene is what we saw on television, the pictures which were shot by the likes of Tumikhabutwele, who was a camera operator based here in Mahikeng. The second scene, that is where 17 workers died, happened outside the view of cameras. And according to the evidence that was led at the commission, that scene, which happened at the small copy, was identified as the killer zone. That is where some workers were killed while hiding between the rocks, and some of them surrendering.
Yeah, and we'll speak to Greg Marinovich later, investigating a photojournalist looking at the evidence after, suggesting that some of those mine workers were hunted down and killed at very close proximity. Sello, one of the things you say is interesting, that this was so volatile, something bad would have happened. And I think you also explored the conditions of the community. Lonmin's role often highlighted. Since then, the mine has been sold to Sibanye. But the way in which the mine workers were dwelling, exacerbating to the concerns.
I think the role of Lonmin and what happened days leading to the 16th and on the actual day has been downplayed. And if you remember, Francis, during the platinum boom between 2005 to 2010, Lonmin had agreed to build better accommodation facilities for their workers. They did not do that. In fact, they reneged on their obligations through the dictates of the mining charter, particularly your social labor plans and corporate social investment, to address where workers were living, the conditions where workers were living in. Now, what Lonmin did, instead of building better accommodation facilities for these workers, they instead gave them living out allowance. Now, the living out allowance could not sustain workers nor grant them those accommodation facilities. Instead, they took this money and built informal settlements. It is not by surprise that currently at Lonmin and the entire Platinum Belt, you see shanty towns. And the investigation that was done by a Benchmark Foundation, whose chairperson is Bishop Joe Soka, out of 30,000 employees of Lonmin, or rather workers who were employed by Lonmin, only 3,000 of them lived in proper accommodation facilities. Lonmin was never held responsible for reneging on these commitments that they made to build proper accommodation facilities for them. But over and above that, the corporate social investment and social labor plans, it was only after 2012 that we saw some movement in trying to respond to what I've just alluded to. But even then, it was through a triple P partnership with government.
All right. But before I throw my final question, let's just look at this that I want to ask you about its significance. Bishop Joe Sekwa of the Marikana Support Group says that one of the mine worker leaders gave him a call moments before the tragedy. Let's take a look.
This day 3 years ago. Bishop, good morning.
Good morning.
I would think that on the 16th of August, if my memory serves me well, one of the mine workers gave you a call minutes before they were shot down by police. Does that call still gives you sleepless nights?
Well, that call is still haunting me today. And in actual fact, I think I need to deal with it, because I believe it is Mambush who had given me instructions to go and meet with Mkashi. And after meeting with the managers of Lonmin and trying to go back, we're told we cannot go back to the mountain because it was a security risk and the police wanted us out here. On the way, then my cell rang. And as I answered it, he said to me, "Bishop, where are you? We are being killed." When I said, "Who kills you?" there was no further voice. But I could hear from the phone the hovering of helicopters, the sounds and the gunshots and things like that. And so that.
All right, so that was an interview that you did in 2012. Sello, looking back, the significance of that.
Indeed, I think Bishop got this call between 3:30 and 4:15 in that afternoon. I think it was a Thursday, if my memory serves me well. And that's how the story panned out. In a matter of minutes, workers were killed by police. And as I've mentioned earlier on, the first scene was at a kraal near Ngane Informal Settlement. And the second scene was at the Kopi, where it was identified as the killer zone, Francis.
All right, thank you so much for those remembrances. Sello Tatai, a former SABC journalist.